Good morning.
Thomas Jefferson once said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Don't remain silent.
The recording has started.
Up in the Pickle Barrel with author, speaker, commentator, and show host Bill Pickle.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Glad to have you here in the Pickle Barrel this morning. I tell you, I am hot. Now, I'm not talking about temperature-wise due to the weather. I am hot on the innards, the inside, my brain, my temper. I am hot. And we're going to be talking about a couple of things this morning here directly. The filibuster. And we're going to talk about North Korea also a little bit. And I'm going to bring you up to date on some other topics that we have talked about recently that I've got some comments and questions about, and some updates on some others that I just talked about a little bit yesterday. So we've got a full 2-hour schedule here in the Pickle Barrel. And I hope you'll participate in the conversation and stick around with us. If you would like to jump in here and share your opinions and your comments, we've got the chat room available at AmericanPatriotRadio.com. We've got the chat room right here on Facebook. And we also have a phone number you can call in and express your thoughts and opinions, your concerns, your complaints, or whatever you want to talk about. We're wide open for discussions. You can call in at 712-770-4160 and enter the magic PIN number 263151#. Now, that will get you in. You can listen to the show, and then when you get ready to jump in and say your words of wisdom, all you got to do is hit *6. And when you do that, you'll be live on air. You'll be infamous. You'll be famous all around the world because people from all over the world listen to American Patriot Radio and yours truly in the Pickle Barrel. All right, before we get started, just a couple of little things. We're going to cut history a little short this morning. I got too much to say. So we're just going to hit a couple of small things. Just a small number of things. In 1776, the Continental Congress, having decided unanimously to make the Declaration of Independence, affixes the signatures of the other delegates to the document. They all didn't sign them the same day, you know. So anyway, there you go. 1790, the first U.S. Census begins enumerating the population. Enumerating. I think that's kind of like counting, isn't it? They counted the people. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. 1819, the first parachute jump from a balloon is made by Charles Guill in New York City. The one thing on my to-do list, my to-do bucket, that I have not done so far. And I've got a couple of guys I talked to just a couple of weeks ago that said they would be more than glad to have me go with them. And I told them that's great. I appreciate that, and I'm going to schedule that as soon as I garner the nerve to do it. That's my problem. Being scared to death of heights, that's the last thing I've got to do. I've done the bungee jump. Yeah, I did that. I did the, what do they call that? The zip line. Done that. I just haven't got around to the parachute jump. Maybe, just maybe by the end of the year. Maybe. I'm sweating right now. Okay. Let's see here. 1832, troops under General Henry Atkinson massacre the Sauk Indian men, women, and children who are followers of Black Hawk at the Bad Axe River in Wisconsin. Black Hawk himself finally surrenders 3 weeks later, bringing the Black Hawk War to an end. That was one of the big, bloodiest Indian wars of all time in the U.S. You just don't hear much about it. 1847, William Leadsdorff launches the first steamboat in San Francisco Bay. 1862, Union General John Pope captures Orange Court House, Virginia. The Army Ambulance Corps is established by Major General George McClellan in 1862. Wild Bill Hickok shot while playing poker. Legend has it was by one of his disgruntled friends. And he was, well, anyway, he died. They misspelled his name here on this, by the way. 1914, Germany invades Luxembourg. Calvin Coolidge, vice president in 1923, becomes president upon the death of Warren G. Harding. Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, 1943. Towing an injured sailor, swims to the small island in the Solomon Islands. The night before, his PT boat had been split in half by a Japanese destroyer. The night before, and he was out there swimming, towing a guy. You know, if you've seen the movie, you know, he had that strap around his neck, and then he had his teeth, and he had it around his neck. It's a good movie, by the way. Okay, some of the famous people, just a couple here. Let's see here. James Baldwin, writer whose works include Go Tell It on the Mountain and Notes of a Native Son, was born in 1924. Peter O'Toole, I think one of the greatest actors ever, was born in 1932. And James Fallows, writer and editor of the U.S. News and World Report, was born in 1949. I mean, that's a young guy compared to most of these editors and publishers. 1949, just a couple years older than me. Young guy, in spirit anyway. But those are some of the things that happened on this day in history. Let's get started talking about things that's going on right now. We were talking about the economy a little bit yesterday, and I'm going to zip through these things just like I was on a zip line. And I want to just bring you up to date on a couple of real quick things. Auto sales drop again. July's decrease marks the 7th consecutive month of declining auto sales. And so while everybody thought it was going to be a good one, it didn't quite turn out that way. Analysts have been predicting that the lower U.S. auto sales this year as the demand has dropped. General Motors, they fell 1.5. Oh, no, not 1.5. General Motors said its sales fell 15% in July. That's pretty significant. Ford dropped 7.5%. Fiat Chrysler sales were down 10%. Volkswagen sales were down 5.8%. Nissan fell 3%. Honda fell 1.2%. Unreal. Toyota rose 3.6%, and Subaru was up a full 7%. SUV demand has gone up here in the US of A. It's been kind of like a roller coaster. It was up this last month, so those are a few things there going on that you might want to see. Sprint finally overcame its second straight quarter of losses to post a first profit in 3 years. Yes, I had heard that. I never had looked at it, but they had been losing money, and they have now had some success. Good for them. I'm glad. I like to see businesses make money. It means they might stick around a while, you know. Okay. Christopher Wray, as you know, is now the FBI head. The Senate on yesterday overwhelmingly confirmed him to hold the FBI, replacing James Comey. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what takes place now. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not even going to say another word about it other than it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Now, Lindsey Graham did say today's bipartisanship show a support to indicative of Ray's professionalism and commitment to independence. I have no doubt the FBI is in good hands with Mr. Ray at the helm. Good for you. I'm glad to hear that. All right, moving right along. Yesterday, I had mentioned that the nuclear plant here in South Carolina, one of the big ones, the one at Santee Cooper and South Carolina Electric are in cahoots with, is pulling the plug. Well, you know, it's been a long time coming. They were billions and billions and billions of dollars down. They were $9 billion already spent on the project. They needed 20 some odd more billion dollars to do it. And so they said, well, this is just not looking too productive. Duh. Boy, only took you $9 billion to figure that one out. Well, utility companies came out yesterday and gave us all the grand news that some of us expected. Your electric bill, now that they're no longer funding that project, will not go down. As a matter of fact, it may still go up because now they are saying they have got to recoup the money they lost. They lost the money, we foot the bill. Oh, yeah, I'm getting hotter as the morning goes here. I'm getting hotter as they go. Oh, man. Yeah, let's raise your electric bill because we screwed up. We spent $9 billion and spent several years and got nothing accomplished. Other than that, we're going to have to bulldoze over and cover up, and we'll try to protect some of it just in case nuclear energy changes and we get some more money to do it. Well, I tell you what, that's fine with me. Let them do it. Let them do it. By gosh, we'll still pay it. We need it, right? GOP shows yesterday. I was watching and listening to several different venues, and it sounds to me like maybe there's some talk in the air that they may want to actually sit down and talk to the Democrats about health care. Well, I'm going to talk about that until they really get serious and start talking about it themselves. I am not happy with those campers up there, and that's all they're doing. They're there on camping trips. They're not doing anything at all for us right now, and enough is enough. Yeah, I told you in the beginning, I'm hot this morning. All right, now then, the topic I want to start off with here was just covered by a show immediately preceding mine, Coffee with Candy. And in case Candy is still listening, I tell you, Candy, you and I agreed 100% on that topic. And, you know, it's not very often I agree with 100% with somebody, but young lady, this morning I agreed 100% with you. You know, I want to go back a few days, actually a couple of months or so, and tell you this. Back in March, the day before my birthday, Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer and Democrats said they were going to try to filibuster the nomination of Neil Gorsuch, President Trump's pick to join the Supreme Court. People say that, well, the Republicans are the masters of the filibuster. They use it. Well, Democrats use it too, folks. Political parties have the same options, the same rights to use whatever tools are out there available to them. The filibuster, folks, is something that is one of the most important tools that exist in Washington, D.C. Bill, you've lost your blooming mind. Why you say that? Well, we're going to talk about that in depth, and we're going to take a little history lesson along the way. But I want to tell you this. The filibuster rule in the Senate. Any debate could technically last forever, folks. I mean, seriously, it could last forever because of a rule requiring 60 senators to agree to force a vote. If 60 senators don't agree to a vote, the debate could feasibly just keep going on forever unless the majority party deploys what's called the nuclear option. Now then, when it comes to the nuclear option, this is what this is. It changes the filibuster rules and requires only 51 votes to shut off debate. Okay, now that's one of the rules. So, the filibuster doesn't have to go on forever. There are rules to stop it. The nuclear option. Now, the filibuster is, let's be honest, it is a parliamentary trick used by the minority party to try to stop legislation they don't agree with from coming to vote in most cases. That is what it is. But there's a reason that's important. There's a reason that's important. And now we're going to have a little bit of history lesson on this so you'll know exactly what's going on. The history of the filibuster is kind of confusing. You can look at 5 or 6 different sources and they tell you where it all comes from. But the Oxford Dictionary in 1591 has the word fleebooters. Now, the word was applied to loquacious, let's say, legislators in 1890, who sought to interfere with the Senate business. Filibustering senators, now this comes from Melissa Block, who is, I don't know if she still is, but I know she used to be with NPR. But filibustering senators were, by extension, pirates raiding the Congress for their own political gain. And I guess you could say that is exactly right. That's what they use the filibuster for. It's one of the few tools that the minority parties have to keep them in the game. You see, I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit and tell you this. I don't believe the filibuster was originally intended to be part of the Senate's original design. It came about by accident, and I think that we should be very grateful that it did. You see, the filibuster keeps any one party from having total control of everything. I just think that we need to understand how important this thing is. Neil Gorsuch made a comment just, not too long ago. He said the most persistent myth is that the filibuster was part of the Founding Fathers' constitutional vision for the Senate. Binder said this. I'm sorry, not Gorsuch. Green light just came on. Binder said that, not Gorsuch. It was during that. He said that the upper chamber was designed to be a slow-moving, deliberative body that cherished minority rights. All right? Now then, if you remember, Appellate Judge Neil Gorsuch testified during the third day of his confirmation hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Rather than the filibuster exist because Aaron Burr said it should, in 1805, Burr pointed to a rule that would later be used to cut off debate, known as the previous question motion. In other words, we're going to cut you off and we're going to go back and talk about something else. Well, as an example of the redundancy in the Senate's rule book, Binder testified, it wasn't until 32 years later that a senator used a loophole to drag out a discussion indefinitely, effectively paralyzing the chamber. Back in 1837, I've got to double check my notes here before I use the wrong name again. The Whigs, that was the the party back then. The senators opposed Andrew Jackson filibustered to prevent Jackson's allies from expunging a resolution of censure against him. Now, this is according to the Atlantic, which is, different publication. The filibusters' habit of, I guess what some people would call gumming up the system, putting a hiatus on things, it has been up the legislation process and has drawn the ire of various people, especially senators, for decades, actually over a century. They did, however, try to abolish this rule more than once. The first time was around 1850, 1873, 1883, again in 1890. Then finally, in 1917, they did change the rule. And this is when they put the closure rule into the mix of things, and which allowed a supermajority of 60 senators to end the debate. Now, you got to stop and think about this. We can't get 10 people to agree on most topics. Try getting 60 senators to back a controversial topic like we've been seeing lately over the last several years, matter of fact, and right now before us today. It's a tall order to get that many people to agree on anything, especially when they're politicians. It's almost nail impossible. Sometimes they say that just a mere threat of a filibuster will make people work together, but that hasn't worked that well lately either, has it? Well, now let's move it up to today. Now, senators don't have to keep talking to filibuster a bill. It used to be, they say, well, someone has to stand up there and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, like they did in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, one of my favorite movies of all time. They don't have to do that now. Today, senators don't have to keep talking to filibuster a bill, as noted by so-called, quote-unquote, racist Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina did for more than 24 hours back in 1957. He stood there and talked and talked and talked. Actually, it was 24 hours and 18 minutes, if I remember that correctly. Don't forget that 18 minutes. That might have made the difference. In recent years, though, some members of the majority party have suggested doing away with the filibuster entirely. And I tell you what, I'm grateful to Mitch McConnell for this. He's one that is not too comfortable with it, doing away with it. And it would be a big mistake. And I hope from now until who knows when, the filibuster stays intact. It's got to. It's a vital tool. I think that senators today are better think twice, better think thrice before they start considering doing away with the filibuster. I think they need to just, I'm sorry, President Trump, they need to ignore you on this topic. They need to ignore you totally on this topic. I think it's important for us to know the history of things so you know why and where and how we got where we are today. It tells you, it shows you the reasoning, the meaning behind those who put it in effect. You know, I think that another topic we're going to talk about is another one where history we need to review about before we take any major action. You know, but Sunday, Trump tweeted, big deal, "Don't give up, Republican senators. The world is watching. Repeal and replace and go to 51 votes." Trump tweeted this, repeating calls that he made earlier in the weekend to kill the filibuster. President Trump, bad idea. I'm sorry, I got to disagree with you on it. I think, first of all, we need to look at some facts, realities, do a reality check, however you want to say it, about two major issues, the realities of this. One, the Senate health care bill, and I'm going to add an S onto that because there's been more than one of them. The Senate health care bills were not filibustered by Democrats who were prevented by Republicans from using the tool. All right? The Senate health care bills were not filibustered by Democrats who were prevented by Republicans from using that tool. GOP leaders employed a budget procedure to allow the bills to be approved by just 51 votes. Republicans who hold 52 seats in the Senate failed because they could not convince enough of our own senators, their comrades, their fellow conservatives, their fellow GOPers. They could not convince them to support the bills. The final bill brought to the Senate floor early Friday, if you remember correctly, fell 49-51 with 3 Republicans voting against it. It wasn't the filibuster that hurt us. It was the other 3 Republicans that went to the other side. Or you might even say some of those more conservative blue dog Democrats that followed suit instead of crossing over also. Second, asking senators to give up the filibuster is asking them to give up their greatest power today. Right now, as we may have the majority, but we don't have the votes. We don't have a party, a Senate that is working together, coming together to solve the issues. So the filibuster right now is the biggest tool in our toolbox. You know, Francis Lee, a political science professor at the University of Maryland, said, an individual senator's ability to prolong debate and block a vote is what makes senators, even freshmen, very powerful. In other words, that vote, that filibuster, makes them equal to those around them. It goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, how this enables people to work together if they will. It makes it equal for them to be on the playing field. You know, they can force coalition builders to come and talk to them. Without it, they may not have that crutch, that leverage that they need, that crowbar, whatever you want to call it. So they wouldn't give up that power unless the Senate literally could not function. Even then, it might be too hard to change the rule. But third, and this is not by far the last, but it's the third major point I want to make. The Senate filibuster rule allows a minority party to prevent the majority from jamming through the bills with little or no bipartisan support. Now, it takes the supermajority, 60 senators, to send a filibuster and end a filibuster and proceed to an up or down vote on her bill. Folks, the most important thing that a filibuster does is, in addition to fostering compromise, is to give legitimacy to the result of the vote. If you didn't have legitimacy, if you had one party, the one that is usually the one with the numbers in the Senate, to jam and ram everything through, it's no telling what things would look like today in the U.S. of A. Probably much worse than it is, if you can imagine that. Joshua Hutter, a senior fellow at Georgetown University, says that if you can get buy-in by everyone, if you can get buy-in from both parties, I believe is what he exactly said, if you can get buy-in by both parties, it's easier for everyone to accept the outcome. See, the games we're playing right now just adds fuel to the fodder. You know, when it's 100% Republican, 100% Democrat, 100% those hard-nosed righties, and those god dang snowflakes on the left, 100% of them. Can you imagine if we didn't have some type of control? Can you imagine? I can't. And God bless, I tell you, I do not want to see it. I do not want to see it. Fletcher says, Rush Limbaugh stated yesterday again, Republicans are blowing a chance of the century to change our country for the better. Yes, they are. Neil says, GOP is not a working, listen to the word there, folks. The GOP is not a working majority party. Truer words never said, Neil. Thank you. Fletcher comes back and says, Mitch McConnell needs to use his bully pulpit, giving and taking support, funds for re-election, oppose space, access all. You know what? There's a games there that could be played, Fletch. You're absolutely right. Newt Gingrich is about to implode about this blunder by the party in all three branches who can't do a thing for Americans. And, I was listening to him, Fletch, a couple of days ago. I was listening to some of his things that not live. I was picking them up on the internet. And you're exactly right. This guy is about to go bonkers. Don't you know some of these people wish now maybe that he had become president? I'm just wondering. Is there something there in the future, maybe? I think probably the one thing that, and I'm going to get off this real quick here, but, well, not real quick. I still got a few more things, but as quick as I can. The one thing that I really, really want to get across is the fact that the filibuster does indeed empower everybody. Everybody. I don't care how strong you are, how new you are, how unlike you are by your compadres in the Senate, or how you're worshiped by those in the Senate. They don't care if you've been there 50 years or if you've been there 2 years. It's a tool that makes everyone more equal. You talk about draining the swamp, taking the power away from all the old time folks, all those old timers, hardcore. If you do away with a filibuster, you have done away with one of the tools to bring equality to everybody in the Senate and give them the opportunity, whether they're new, they're old, they're in the swamp, or they're the ones that's holding the plug and fixing to yank the chain of the swamp. It gives them all equality. You know, senators on both sides of this topic have really worked to a certain extent very close on preventing, and I'm going to use the word guarding, protecting this legislative filibuster. Just in April of this year, 61 senators sent a letter to McConnell urging him to preserve the rule. And I want to read to you some of the things that were in that letter, and it spells it out pretty closely to perfect. If you abolish the legislative filibuster, the minority party senators would be almost as impotent as the minority party House member, which is pretty damn impotent. That came from Jack Pitney, a political science at Claremont McKenna University. I don't think it's a university, it's a college. It's college in Southern California. The last thing any self-respecting, and I agree 100% with this, I wish I had come up with this phrase myself. I think the last thing any self-respecting senator wants is to get rid of that filibuster. There's a reason why House members run for the Senate and not the other way around. That filibuster gives them equality. It gives them a certain amount of power. Power that they would not have as a rookie. And they need it. They need it. You know, it gives both parties, members of both sides, especially the majority, more freedom from the base of their party. You know, I am going to say this out loud, and I want everyone to hear me. I am not against a senator that bucks his own party. If that senator can convince me that he's doing what is best for the people. You know, believe it or not, folks, some things senators do and congressmen, some of the things they do are not exactly the best thing for their people. The people at home, in their state, in their districts. It's not always what's best for them. They don't always do what their constituents ask them to do. And I wouldn't expect them to, because, you know, sometimes we at home don't see the whole picture that they see. So I have no problem if a senator bucks the system and uses the filibuster. You know, the leader can say, I love your ideas. They can say, oh, I know where you're coming from. But unfortunately, folks, it's unlikely that you can get that bill through. So let's not even think about it. Let's let it go. We got other things we need to do. Well, you know what? There is something you can do. You can filibuster. You can filibuster. And the filibuster does a couple of things. One, it allows the topic, the issue, to stay on the floor. And it also, and don't tell me this hasn't happened. Don't tell me it hasn't happened. You can also hear the speaker or the president of the Senate, whatever, telling people, hey, look, we can't do it. You know, we don't have the numbers, blah, blah, blah. I understand where you're coming from. I'd love to work with you. But, you know, I've got to stand my ground. I got to stand my ground for everybody. Oh, but, hey, won't you consider filibustering? You got control then. It protects the Speaker of the House, whoever the leadership is, it protects them. It gives them an avenue that they can also play this game. So anyway, you know, I hope that the president, and I hope conservatives who are talking with and trying to work through this, I hope they realize, folks, that look, short-term victories are not always winning the war. There's a lot of short-term victories. Let's go back just in our history, the Civil War, the war between the states, the war of northern aggression, whatever. You know, the South had quite a few small victories. They had a couple of big victories. But they didn't win the war, did they? They didn't win the war. And look where they are now. Subjects of the North. And they are. We are. We're subjects of the North. You've got to have a weapon. You've got to have a secret weapon. The filibuster's not secret, but you've got to have that weapon that you can pull out and use when everything else fails. And the filibuster does just that. Now, I can go on and on and on and on, but I'm not. All I want to tell you is that I hope, I pray, Lord God above, I pray that we do not lose the filibuster. When I say we, I am not talking for myself as a conservative. I'm talking about the whole gamut of people, left and right, middle, whoever. That tool is important to keeping our process working. And why would you want to get rid of the engine of your car if your car is going to die on the side of the road and never be usable? We got to have it. Got to have it. All right, I need to check the chat room again. I've been just screaming and yelling. I need to go over here and see this again. The war isn't over yet. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I hope we stay right in there with it, too. All right. Oh, Lordy. Let me get a drink of water here. I done got thirsty. Excuse me just a sec. Excuse me, I'm drinking a lot of water. You notice I haven't been having that coffee cup with me. I'm back on my diet, trying to get physically fit. You know, I'd like to live about at least 30 more years ragging on the internet about, or whatever the tool is in the future, about what's going on. All right. Oh, Lordy. North Korea. I didn't really want to get on this right now, but I want to do it right now anyway to get started on it because I'm hot about this too. You know, I want to go back a couple of months, and I pulled a couple of articles, commentaries on Korea. And I was thinking, well, you know, I don't know if I want to talk about that today. You know, I'm going to hold off on that and see what happens. I don't want to hold off. Well, you know what? I held off long enough. You know, there's a lot of people, and apparently President Trump is one of them, that says Korea is the #1 threat to the U.S. And there's a lot of people, apparently, as you can see what's going on today, out there that says bad things are going to happen when they get ICBMs. Well, folks, apparently, They either got them or they're so damn close to it, it's unreal. According to the latest test, you might say they got them. Because the one they did last time, everybody agrees, could possibly hit the United States of America. You know, for years, this is nothing new. They've been working on this for years. They've been saying they were going to build nuclear missiles that can hit the U.S. mainland. And they're always saying that. But here recently, the terminology has changed. You notice they're saying now, we will have them in very short period, soon. So, you know, that tells me that they're serious about doing this. Now then, and I think this is one reason why our nation right now, our president in particular, and a lot of members in Congress say that we have reason to fear them. That for that reason, the U.S. considers them a top threat to security. And, you know, I guess, you know, you do have to consider that. Now, Mattis, Secretary of Defense Mattis, didn't mince words before the House Armed Services Committee back in June, saying North Korea, not Russia or terrorism, represented the top threat to the U.S. in 2017. He said North Korea's continued pursuit of nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them has increased in pace and scope. The regime's nuclear weapon program is a clear and present danger. In other words, it's real, folks. We can't say what if anymore. It's real. And he also said that the regime's provocative actions, and I'm going to quote this, he said the regime's nuclear weapons program is clear and present danger to all, and the regime's provocative actions, manifestly illegal under international law, have not abated despite United Nations censure and sanctions. You know, about that same time, if I remember correctly, the leadership there in North Korea made the comment that they will have, or did they say we do have? Either way, either they do have, they will have nuclear missiles that could reach New York City. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind that's their ultimate goal. Now then, I think question I have is just how close are they? You know, you and I, hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I would add one word of caution to what you're saying. And I'm not saying that there's not legitimate concerns. I'm not saying that everything you're saying isn't true. But I remember in 2004, it was like the same thing with Iran. Remember how, like, each year passed, Iran was 1 year away from getting nuclear weapons.
Yes.
And then the joke became with Iran that in 30 years, Iran would be 1 year away from having nuclear weapons. So I would only caution and say that, not that anything you're saying is not accurate, but who's putting this narrative out here? Where's Trump getting his information from? Is he getting his information and intelligence from people that have questionable intelligence and that seem to be itching for a war at every corner, at every turn? So I'd want to hear what the other side's saying that maybe feels that this is a problem, but maybe not to this degree. Because one thing I've learned in this country, about our country, is that when it comes to foreign policy, we got a lot of people that are supposed to be experts that have a piss poor track record. And to me, at a certain point, if you're an expert, show me where you've been right.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes, but give me some of the instances where you've been right.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the same people that are pushing for probably a confrontation with North Korea, they've pushed for confrontation with every single country in the Middle East probably over the last 15 years.
And they pushed for the war with Iraq. They were pushing for war with Iran. They pushed for regime change in Syria and in Libya and in Egypt and in Yemen. They're pushing for war now with Russia, belligerents. They pushed for regime change in Ukraine. So have we gotten good results from any of these other actions? So I think it's important before we rush into something and get bullied into submission and this idea that North Korea has to be dealt with militarily, that we get all sides of the argument, and then, and only then, make some kind of a decision. But I really wonder if North Korea is a problem to the extent that a lot of the warmongers are making it out to be.
Well, Brian, let me add this in here. And this is one of the big issues. What would happen? Let's just say this time next week, we found out that North Korea indeed had the means of transportation and a nuclear warhead that they could shoot to San Francisco, New York City, Dallas, Chicago, wherever, Washington, D.C., wherever. What do you think would happen?
Well, I don't know what would happen. But the question would be, what would be the appropriate response?
Well,
the appropriate response
yeah.
is to do what Israel did in Iran at times, which is to mow the lawn. I'm okay with mowing the lawn, but I don't want to rip up the yard. Remember, the whole thing what Iraq taught us is, you go into a store and you break something, you break it, you buy it, you own it. So I think we should be very careful, and any response should be measured, because I'm sure one of the things that they're just itching to do is to have regime change in North Korea.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. And what's going to replace it?
Well, the word is, they've already got nuclear, they have the capacity of doing nuclear. But the question I have is, what will happen? And you know what I'm thinking?
We don't know what will happen.
Well, Brian, that's true. We don't know. But my thoughts are nothing. Nothing. And the reason I say that, we've been over there since the 1950s. Okay?
Right.
We have over 28,000 U.S. troops there 24/7 since the 50s, folks. What kind of expense and all kind of, well, you just go down and look at the pros and cons of this. Japan lives just right across a little stretch of water from them. And nothing's happened. And I think one reason for that is, folks, and look, I may be way off base here, but I want to tell you this. Say they do have weapons already. They say they do. Let's just say they do. I don't think they have that many. They may have 5 or 10, 15, 20, 2 or 3. Who knows? But we do know that we have well over 2,000 of them.
That's my point.
Okay? Now then, if they got 1 or 2 and we got 2,000, don't you think it's kind of a stupid idiot that would pick a fight with those odds?
See, I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think there's a lot to be said for what you just pointed out, which is that we've been there since 1949, 1950, whatever it is.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
They've been dictators in North Korea for over 65 years. Every time they feel threatened, they get belligerent and they talk a big game. But in the end, that there's been relative peace over there.
Yeah.
And so, what I feel is, there's a good chance nothing would happen. And certainly, whatever would happen, it wouldn't be worth going to a war over.
Yeah.
And again, unless there's really a better alternative. But this whole belligerence thing needs to stop, especially because we don't have a good track record with this kind of stuff. We don't have a lot of victories.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would turn out too well.
Yeah.
Besides, if North Korea, here's a point I would make. If North Korea really is this imminent threat and danger, South Korea, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, has a population at least twice the size of North Korea.
Right.
They have an economy many times the size of North Korea.
Right.
If I'm South Korea and I'm scared to death of North Korea militarily, then I'd be spending a lot more money to build up my military, regardless of what America's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be bolstering my military, doing everything I could to get more advanced weapons systems.
Mm-hmm.
Not relying on America for THAAD missiles, but I'd be doing everything I can. I'd have a massive military buildup.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably increase the size of my military.
Well, Brian, why do they need to do that? Because we're there for them.
Well, it's one thing if it's just you. The point is, if this is just some great threat that's going to change everything, that's a provocative change to the status quo.
Yes.
The point I'm making is, if really the threat is really the same threat we've had for a number of years, then there's no reason to change. But again, if it's this provocative threat that's going to change everything and make the world so much more dangerous, I'm from South Korea. I'm thinking, I don't care what America's doing for me. I got to start building up my own military. It's like the analogy I make is to Eastern Europe. You get all these Eastern European countries to talk a big game about how Russia's a threat, and not only are they NATO deadbeats, maybe that's less of a problem now, but they don't spend any kind of money on their military.
Yeah.
So, again, if the countries that live, that border on North Korea or live close to North Korea or border on Russia don't feel it's enough of a threat to where they're not willing to have a major, massive military buildup and spend more GDP on military, then maybe what we're being told isn't exactly true. Because I just try to think of this logically.
Yeah.
If I was running South Korea and North Korea is this great threat, I'm thinking, well, I have an economy, a much larger economy, I have a much larger population, I have the economic means to do it. Let's start, mobilizing and building up our military, not to have to rely on America. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I think you're right.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Good morning, Michael in Facebook. Glad to have you this morning, sir. I also, you got to look at it like this, I think. Just had a thought come through my head. About 5-6 months ago, I was talking to a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and we started chatting a little bit. Can you imagine that? And Korea came up, and I asked him about, our troops there and how long they've been there and all that. And he said, well, Bill, realistically, he said, you won't hear too many people say this, but, one thought is that by having them there and the constant rotation of people active duty overseas is good training for the troops, because they get a taste of what it's like to be away from home for extended period of times. They become familiar with the customs, traditions, the thinking, the logic that these people have, or no logic in some cases probably. But he said that, and that's one reason, he said. Now you won't see this in writing. I don't believe. I've never seen it in writing. This is his words. But he says, I think that's one reason why we have troops, and we would like to have troops stationed different places so we can have this ready force. And I can understand there's some logic to that, but how much logic?
I think there's a lot more to the story than that. I think what it is if you are responsible for a large portion of another country's military defense, then you have a major say in their foreign policy. Like, the whole sanctions thing with Russia, when they had the first round of sanctions, what was it, 2 years ago? A lot of these European countries didn't want to impose sanctions on Russia because they had good trade relations. But even Merkel, that horrible woman in Germany, didn't want them. But because they have good trade relations, but because America is providing for a large portion of Germany's defense, Germany had to go along with it. And so that's to me is the biggest thing. there might be, I'm not saying there's not something to be said for what you were told.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is you get to dictate the terms.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really, providing the majority of a country's national defense, then you get the biggest say in what their foreign policy ought to be. And that's why the whole thing with Russia's partly gotten so out of hand, because the European countries don't have the independence to say, no, we don't want another round of sanctions on Russia, because the card that the neocons have to pull is that, well, you know what, we have, we're responsible for your military defense through NATO.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you want to have a say in your foreign policy, then you have to, take care of your own military defenses.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these countries, are unable or unwilling to do it.
Yeah.
But, if it were me, like in South Korea, what's the old expression? If you want to get something done, the best thing to do is do it yourself.
Yeah. All right, Brian.
That's how I would look.
Yeah. Okay. I hate to do this, but we are at the top of the hour. We're about a minute past, and I'm going to get my butt chewed out. But we got to take a short break here, folks. Brian, do not run off. I've got some more I want to talk to you about with this, okay? And, folks, we'll be right back here in the Pickle Barrel in just a couple of minutes here. Go wet your whiskers or get something to drink to soothe your throat like I'm going to. And we'll be back here in just a couple of minutes in the Pickle Barrel at AmericanPatriotRadio.com.
Welcome back. You're in the Pickle Barrel with Biddle Pickle.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Glad to have you here this morning. We are in the Pickle Barrel, figuratively speaking and for real. Every single day we find more and more issues, more and more problems that we cannot overcome, or we could, but we won't. And that in itself puts us in the pickle barrel. And then we're faced with those issues that we don't know what to do with, which one of them we're talking about right now, North Korea. And we're going to continue that conversation in just a second. And first, I'd like to invite you to participate in the conversation. All you have to do is, if you're on Facebook, you see the chat room right there, and you see Michael Parnell there and Candy, several other people. And then you have the AmericanPatriotRadio.com site. You can go there and join the group there. And be sure to join the group, by the way, when you're there. It sure makes things a lot easier for you to get in and out and around, and you see so much more information on the whole gamut of things at American Patriot Radio. We'd like to have you there. Then you can do like Brian. Brian, you're still there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, you can call in like Brian does, and I love Brian calling in from Pennsylvania. See what those damn Yankees up there thinking. Kidding you, Brian? You know, you too can call in at 712-770-4160 and then put in the magic PIN number 263151#. And if you get ready to talk and you want to jump in here, feel free to do so. Hit *6 and you will then be live. Brian, you know the difference between a Yankee and a damn Yankee?
What's that?
A damn Yankee comes down south and stays. He doesn't go home.
Well,
now, that is an old joke. I'm serious. I don't believe that. I've got a lot of Yankee friends down here, and they have made our economy what it is today.
yeah.
Time to suck up now since I said that, right? Oh gosh, we were talking about North Korea, folks, and we're going to continue that conversation. You know, I saw a report. This was back about a year ago. I think it was June, maybe. It was right at a year ago. But it was a layout of North Korea's artillery concentration. And the whole topic about it is the based on their own and expected positions, North Korea conventional artillery on the border of South Korea can target South Korea to varying degrees. And based on this report, and it had a map with it and everything, based on this report, it's talking about the range of artillery firing and things like this, that they have enough artillery, conventional artillery, and the numbers of artillery that's amassed along the border, that there is not 1 square mile of South Korea that can't be hit. Now, folks, that's some firepower. Now, all of that firepower is right around the North Korea-South Korea border. And, of course, the highest concentration of weapons, depending on the type they are those that can shoot from the border to almost Seoul, Korea, and South Korea. And then the other artillery, the range is farther, and they don't have as many of those apparently, but they can still hit just about every square inch of South Korea down to about 100 miles south of Seoul, which means just about half, not quite half the whole country can be hit. So, they've got some might there right now. Now, if they get the nuclear weapons, if they get where they can use those and want to use those, you got to stop and think, will they? Will they? Because if they hit South Korea, that doesn't mean all the radiation and all that other stuff is going to stay in South Korea. You know what I mean? Do you cut your own hands off by trying to cut someone's foot off in South Korea? I don't think that's a smart idea, personally. So, that's another reason why sometimes I think this whole idea of them doing something is a little bit out there. But at the same time, we're hearing that, Mattis made clear the U.S. was nearing its end of its rope dealing with North Korea, saying we're exhausting all possible diplomatic efforts in this regard. And North Korea recently taunted Trump by saying it was capable of hitting New York City with a missile. But Mattis said a war today would hurt all of our Asian allies. And see,
thank God at least he said that.
Yeah. See, here we go. Okay. Now we're looking at some more reality. If we do something like this, if we get into a scuffle with North Korea, it's going to affect all of our allied countries, including Japan. So, what do you do? What do you do, folks? I think we need to be chatting with some of our allies, don't y'all? And I think we need to be reevaluating the stuff that we're talking about in total.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that China, whatever the response is going to be, China absolutely doesn't want regime change, because regime change means a big refugee crisis.
Oh!
It's going to affect China.
Oh, yes.
They absolutely don't want that. And, while I have a lot of problems with China, and they are a rival in terms of trade, I really don't want them to be an enemy either.
Mm-hmm.
And the instability that's been brought into Europe, you don't want yet another country faced with that kind of instability.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a world power with nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So, I would say one thing that I'm adamantly opposed to is regime change, because how do you don't get something worse?
Right.
Or whoever replaces it can't hold that country together, as bad as it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll never profess to be a war expert. I mean, my gosh, yes, I still have ties with the military, things like this, but that doesn't mean I'm the expert. If I was the expert, I might be the one in Washington, D.C. right now. But,
I don't know about that. I don't know. No, but let me correct you, Bill. Washington, D.C. is full of sycophant morons.
Oh, are you saying that I have a chance then? I'm a moron?
No, I'm saying, believe me, if you're somehow indicating that you have to be intelligent to be in Washington, I question that based on a lot of the things that I've heard these people say.
Yeah.
I question wisdom. I think we have a lot of people that aren't very intelligent because when I hear some of the solutions being offered to our problems, I think, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, can you argue somebody like a Maxine Waters is intelligent?
Well,
is she the one that said that Putin had invaded South Korea?
yeah. Well,
or is that Pelosi?
I don't, who knows? Both of them probably made some kind of a comment like that, if I remember correctly. Well, all right. Talk about intelligence then, Brian. Donald Trump will go to war with North Korea if Kim Jong-un keeps firing missiles. This was said by, it's been said by several people now, but Senator Graham was the first to say it. He said,
I'm sure that makes him happy.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't bet on it.
Saw a war he didn't like.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I've got a call into him, by the way. I want to find out for myself what he thinks, Brian. But I hate to put it this way, but there's another thing at risk on this topic, and I've got my eyes closed, folks. I'm squinting, I'm praying at the same time that this is not true. But when you're looking at things and you're listening to things that are going on, Trump has to have some type of a visible victory on something.
I don't know.
And some people
Depends on how you define victory.
Well, that's true, but some people are looking at, this deal with North Korea could be a move, and I hope he's not this stupid, and I hope he's not this arrogant, that this move and all this war talk about North Korea is to get the attention off of him and his Russia issues. Now then, there's a lot of people.
I think it could be, I think it could be that he used it as a legitimate threat. It could be that but it could also be that he's partly bluffing.
Right.
To get China to step up and do more, and
other
countries that surround North Korea to do more. But I think everything I've read.
Well, I've heard him say more than once, Brian, that I don't say something unless I mean it.
Right, but there's a lot to be said for jawbone and bluffing, and I think instinctively that Trump has seen the foreign policy we've had for most of the last 25 years and realizes it doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying the guy's a dove. I'm not saying that he's where I am with foreign policy, but I think that, I think if you read about, for example, what happened in Syria, the big changes he made there with cutting off the CIA program, funding the rebels, with basically telling all the generals to go back to the drawing board with Afghanistan and all the other things, I think he gets from everything that I've seen that regime change is not a good idea.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea to get, have a military, militarily invade another country. I think whatever the response is going to be, it's going to be more restrained probably than what anybody else would do. Now, if I'm wrong, then I'm going to have a big disagreement with it.
Right. Okay.
Everything I've seen so far.
Okay. Well, Graham was, if you remember the other day, was on Matt Lauer. And he said he was relaying words directly from the president's mouth when he offered an alternative to dealing diplomatically with the hostile regime during the interview with Matt Lauer, who is on today. I'm sure everybody knows that. Tuesday, that the alternative was war. And Graham said, and I'm quoting this here, I made a copy of this here for that, there is, there is a military option to destroy North Korea's program and North Korea itself. If there's going to be a war to stop them, it will be over there. Now, this is Graham talking. He said, if thousands die, they're going to die over there. If they're not going to die, they're not going to die here. And Trump told me that to my face. So he said, it's inevitable unless North Korea changes, because you're making our president pick between regional stability and homeland security. There will be a war with North Korea over their missile program if they continue to try to hit America with an ICBM. Trump has told me that. I believe him, and if I were China, I would believe him too.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's completely reasonable to say that, if a country is threatening to hit you with ICBM, you're going to defend yourself.
Yeah.
But I think that, but I don't think that necessarily means that's the likely thing that's going to happen. I think what it is, it's him sending out worst case scenario. If you're going to threaten to hit us with missiles, there's going to be, we're not going to allow that to happen.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What if there was overwhelming evidence that said that North Korea has the capability, it is on the missiles, and it's just biding the time to launch them? All right. Now,
them having the missiles in and of themselves, what does that mean? A lot of countries have weapons.
I know, but do they always have them? Do they always have them stocked right there with the warheads on them, ready to fire? Just push the button. And if they are at that point, Brian, if they are at that point and they have overwhelming high confidence that this is imminent, do you wait until they fire those missiles, or do you strike first?
If it's imminent, if you really truly are absolutely convinced that there's an imminent attack, then you defend yourself.
Okay.
Do what you have to do. But I would point out the delineation is that them having weapons, even if the weapons are pointed at us, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use it. I guarantee you, every other country with nuclear weapons has nuclear weapons that are pointed at America in a worst-case scenario, and if they feel they need to use them. So even if they have the weapons, even if they have the weapons pointed at us, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because you're going to tell me that any other country that has nuclear weapons wouldn't have them pointed at any other world power with nuclear weeapons? You're dreaming.
Well,
it's not how the world works.
Yeah. Another thing here, too, is, though, that I would hope, with all the money we have spent on these things and over the years that we've talked about having it, I would hope that we would have sufficient anti-ballistic missiles of our own that we could take them out.
Right.
If not, where do we spend all these billions of dollars that we have blown? Kind of like that that power plant in South Carolina that spent $9 billion. Now they're closing down the project. I hope that we spend our money for a better cause. Trump keeps saying, though, we will handle Korea. He says we will handle Korea.
But in and of itself, what you're saying and what Graham said isn't belligerent. It's just saying if another country is going to threaten us with nuclear weapons, we got a right to defend ourselves.
And we do. And I tell you, Brian, not only can we, we should. We better.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Kennedy said that during the Cuban Missile Crisis before it. But again, the thing is, that's in worst case scenario. There's a difference between saying worst case scenario, that's what we'll do, and saying but the more likely scenario. And to me, the more likely scenario is that North Korea would be out of their mind to do that because they destroy themselves. And the more likely scenario to me is that whatever threats they're making is because they feel threatened. And again, if there's this big problem the way everybody, and look, if there's this big problem the way some people in our country are making them out to be, the countries that surround them don't seem to think so. And even if you're China, and let's say you're in China and you're a hawk and you don't like America, well, believe me, nobody wants to see any country hit with nuclear weapons because there are no winners with that.
Yeah.
So even if we got hit with an ICBM, well, what's the fallout from that? That affects everybody. You don't know how that affects the atmosphere. So, nobody wants to see even their worst enemy get hit like that because it affects everybody. It's what did Khrushchev say? If it ever had a nuclear exchange, the living would envy the dead. So,
right.
Nobody wants to see that. And the fact that these other countries don't seem to be more alarmed tells me that I think we're getting taken again.
Yeah.
I think we're getting conned, and maybe Trump is getting conned on that.
Yeah, maybe so.
How big of a threat they actually are.
Maybe so.
I don't think, I question that. I think it's good to question these things. I think it's good to question them now so that we don't make a big mistake later.
Yeah. Well, Mattis has been, is well known for his aggressiveness. He even his nicknames, he's got 2 or 3 different nicknames that people use for him, like Warrior Monk, Mad Dog, Chaos. I mean, he is a general's general, if you want to call it that, now defense secretary. But anyway, well, another thing that gets me about the conversation that we were just having is who is talking to who here. Trump and Graham have been talking more and more lately. I don't know if people have picked up on that. They've been meeting with each other and Republican senators to continue to push for an effective repeal and replace a health care bill, to remove Barack Obama's landmark program. Even though their continued push for health care overhaul, other senators and other Americans, according to national polls, have expressed desire to move on and focus on other matters like national security. And so I'm thinking that is one reason, because, you said yourself, Lindsey Graham, big on national security and that kind of stuff.
Big hawk.
Hawk, exactly. He is a master hawk, big hawk, king of the hawks, to a certain extent. But, for him and Graham to be talking so much tells me that there might be some other things that they're talking about also, and be interested to see where and how that's coming about.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Mattis about his nickname Mad Dog and all.
Yeah.
That. Warrior. You know what I'd like? But what terms I would like if people in our foreign policy is realism.
Realism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, realism, restraint, common sense.
My God, Brian, you might as well, I guess you're hoping you're going to win the $260 million lottery too, don't you?
Well,
which one do you think will come first?
Maybe win the lottery. But where is the common sense in all this?
Yeah.
How can anybody look at any of these interventions and say that they're a good idea? My God, just look at the consequences of the interventions in the Middle East and what it's doing to Europe. People have any idea how this is going to change Western Europe?
Mm-hmm.
Look at just the antagonism from that mayor in London, who doesn't even think Trump should be allowed to visit the country.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine if the demographic changes continue and that becomes the predominant thinking in England or in France or in Germany, which it's well on its way because Europeans don't have babies.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this mass, unvetted immigration into Europe. Does anybody get how big of a deal that is? It is like, we could very well be, in the years to come, this is how ridiculous things could be. NATO, which is an anti-Russian military alliance, could very well end up being an anti-Russian military alliance that's protecting majority Muslim countries that are extremely hostile to Western values, hostile to women, hostile to anybody that's not of the same religion as them.
Right.
Against a country that's become more Christian, more free market, more capitalist, and all the things that Western civilization is supposed to be. And this is a result of, all these interventions in the Middle East. There was no refugee crisis before 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the point I'm making is when I say restraint, how can you not look at the foreign policy since 9/11 and say that it has not been a disaster?
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, in the years to come, it might be that our best potential allies in Europe are Eastern European countries like Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, and then Russia, and then China, and then Japan, and all the countries that haven't had the influx of unvetted refugees into their country.
Mm-hmm.
Because all these other countries aren't going to resemble what they've been forever.
Yeah.
Western civilization in Western Europe ain't going to exist. They're going to look more like Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah. We got
you can only imagine what that's going to mean.
Yeah, we got a Mike in the chat room, Mike on Facebook, Michael Purnell saying, speaking of snakes, wouldn't trust Lindsey Graham, just saying. A lot of people say that.
Well, Bill, forget that, you know, I mean, I agree with that, but forget the remark per se. But just, again, what is Lindsey Graham's track record? I mean, look, Lindsey Graham has supported every intervention. So if you look at all these interventions in the Middle East, nothing good has come from them. And then to me, you have to start looking at the people that promoted all these interventions.
Oh, he has, without a doubt. And it's all because he said, one thing he says, I'd rather fight them there than here.
Okay, but now what's happening is they're all coming here. I mean, they've all come into Europe. We've had a lot of unvetted refugees come here. We've had terrorist attacks as a result of it. I mean, look what's happening to Europe. You've had Jewish people fleeing France. Fleeing London. You know, they're going to be moving out of these. I mean, if this continues, you know, any of these other religious groups in Europe will never feel safe again. So, you know, even the argument that they used for years, which is better to fight them there than here, well, guess what? As a result of what's happened, you've got these mass refugee movements full of people from the Middle East. They're not vetted. A lot of them are military-age men without wife and children. A lot of them are Muslims, not Christians, and not people from other persecuted, you know, minority groups.
Right.
And they are coming here. So you can't even say anymore, better to fight them there than here, because guess what? They have come here. They have come to Europe. And you know what? So you can't. So even that argument, which I always thought was kind of lame, doesn't fly anymore.
Well, you know, Brian, I would really, or I would say I would really like to know. It may scare the bejesus out of me to know just if there was a way to figure it out. But here's what I'd settle for. I'd settle for a honest to goodness report that would say we have X number of known people here with terrorist connections, X number suspected. I'm afraid that the number would be one that would be so frightful they don't want to pass it out.
Right. Well, and you know, it's not just that; it's the cultural difference. You want to take over a country, conquer a country, take over its culture. You can see that happening, and you know, in a lot of these European countries. I mean, it's just a reality. And so, you know, and again, I would say the people that say better to fight them there than here, and I was saying this 10 years ago, I'll be honest, I didn't really understand it at the time I went to Iraq, but, you know, even 10, 12 years ago, the question was, well, how does fighting, overthrowing the government in Iraq, what does that have to do with terrorism? How does that benefit us in the fight against terrorism, or in Syria, or in Libya? You know, a lot of these interventions had nothing to do with 9/11. It was something different altogether. So, but I mean, I think again, I think for the survival of Western civilization, for the good of humanity, I mean, these things, there needs to be a vigorous debate. And these people, when they make these kinds of arguments like that, you can get called out on it. Instead of it being accepted as wisdom, or that these people are experts, we need to start saying, okay, you're an expert. Tell me, what was your position on this issue, on this issue, on how to deal with this country? And, how did that work out?
Well, I tell you, I think that we are in a world of hurt in so many ways. It's unreal on these. One, because no one really knows what's going on. I don't even think sometimes our officials really know what's going on. But, you know, the options.
Well, maybe they're not experts.
Yeah, maybe not, huh?
They don't even know what's going on.
Maybe not.
If you go to a doctor, there's a difference between a doctor and a quack doctor.
Well, yeah, you know, I hate the whole term, you know, going to the doctor, you know, because, you know, they're a practicing doctor. You know, isn't that what they say? They're a practicing doctor. Shouldn't they already know what they're doing? Why are they practicing?
Right.
Yeah, you know, this terminology sucks, don't it?
If you had to have a surgery, that was a really important surgery, you're going to find the best doctor you can that's had the best outcomes.
Yeah, but still on the licensing and everything, they say practicing doctor. You know, play on words. Play on words.
Experts.
Yeah.
Experts. They could serve in the Pentagon. They could serve in Congress.
Yeah.
They did work in the CIA or the State Department. They did, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
did have these jobs.
Yeah.
The question becomes, well, what are the outcomes of the different, outcomes of the different foreign policy decisions of which they were promoting or which were made?
Uh-huh.
I just don't see why, these people get a pass. I mean, I think it should be to a point now where anytime one of these people is interviewed on any kind of show on the internet or on TV or in the newspaper, and somebody's quoted as an expert or they're, talked to as if they have an opinion that's valuable, it should be, okay, what's their track record? And if the track record, it's like John McCain. I don't get why this guy's so revered. Because what's his track record?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does a week ever go by without this guy talking about going to war with somebody?
Yeah. Brian, let me ask you a question. How old are you?
39.
39. So you would be considered a Gen X, yeah. Let's see, 39. What skirmishes have you seen us have in your lifetime that you remember?
I think I remember the bombing in, was it Libya, a little bit in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I remember Panama. Panama's probably the first one I really remember.
Yeah.
Gulf War I,
Mm-hmm.
Kosovo,
Mm-hmm.
Bosnia.
Okay. A lot of these, yeah, a lot of these so-called police actions that we've been involved in.
Police action.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you get 9/11, you get Afghanistan.
Well, it's true.
Iraq,
Yeah. Okay.
Pakistan.
So you have seen the good, bad, and the ugly.
I've seen a lot of bad and ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Really ugly. Not a lot of good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's something else that comes into play, and I'm going to get off this Korea thing pretty quick here. The Trump administration has said it is ready to unleash American military might to back its diplomacy when it comes to preventing North Korea from developing the nuclear missile capability of hitting the United States. Okay, we've got that down. We know it. He's already said that so many times, it's unreal. But is there... No, I'm not even going to ask that question because I know the answer. There's not an easy military solution to this quote unquote potential crisis. And from what I can tell, and now this, my brain don't work like other people sometimes, but from how I see it, just about anything you're talking about is going to affect thousands of lives, folks. Let's face it. It don't take long to, one missile can take out that many people, 10 times that many people. But last month, I believe it was last month. Yeah, it was July. I'm sure it was. CNN revised military options for North Korea of what has been prepared and were ready to be presented to President Donald Trump. They reported on these things. And one of the things that the National Security Advisor McMaster said at the time was, what we have to do is prepare all options because the president has made clear to us that he will not accept a nuclear power in North Korea and a threat that could target the United States and target the American population. Now, that came from National Security Advisor McMaster during his remarks at a Washington think tank.
He's an Uberhawk.
I'm sorry?
He's an Uberhawk.
Yeah. But, I think that it still remains, though, Brian, to a certain point, there's not very much clarity on those updated options that were laid out by for the president. especially since you haven't heard too many conversations about it since this last test, last Friday. And you just haven't heard that much talk about that anymore. It's all this general stuff. So I'm just wondering if they even believe North Korea will be able to launch reliable nuclear capability at all, especially anytime within the next 12 months or so.
And I've heard and read that they don't that it won't be possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
we're speculating a lot of stuff here, and that's just the way you do it, isn't it? That's just the way it is.
Speculating a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of talk. That might not be necessary.
Well, Brian, a lot of people say speculation's not necessary, but you know what? I think speculation lays a lot of stuff on the table that some people wouldn't think about otherwise. And, and again, it kind of gives us, I know I speculate a lot, as you know, and I think, more or less what I'm doing when I speculate, when I don't know something, especially, I'm asking others who may know more than I do, or at least think they do, to share that information with me. I'm searching for information just like anybody else.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I just think, I think in the end, the way forward with foreign policy is that the best way forward is more and more questions need to be asked. All the options need to be put on the table when there comes to any kind of a problem, and then it needs to be a thing where the people, the experts that are giving you advice, their track record needs to be taken into account.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things with Trump. I mean, what's he needs to be saying to some of these people? I think he does, because there was a general consensus when he read about Afghanistan that everybody was offering options that have already been used in Afghanistan that haven't worked. He's like, look, none of this stuff's worked. So give me a different option, because we put more troops over there. It's just more meat into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
I think he gets a lot of that, but I still think he's poorly served by a lot of his advisors, many of whom contradict him, including his UN.
I agree.
So, and I just think the way moving forward is just, in general, I mean, look, the conventional wisdom on a great many things the last 25 years has led to terrible results.
Yeah.
So it's time to start, with not just with foreign Korea foreign policy, but like our economy. I mean, if you keep doing the same thing, again, I love the quote, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, it's insanity. So we need to start doing things differently, because we've not gotten great results. That should also extend to a lot of these economic matters too, on how to best deal with the economy. Again, it's, the experts on the economy, all these economists and all these Republicans in Congress. Well, what's their track record been? If they have a good track record, if they have a track record of coming up with good ideas that have led to positive results, then you know what? Then if they're called an expert or considered an authority, well then, yeah, maybe they are, because they have a good track record of accurately predicting things.
Yeah.
So, but if they haven't, then, why should they be listened to? Like, why should, like this nitwit Jeff Flake in Arizona, why should the Republicans follow his ideas on the economy and globalization when it destroyed the Republican Party in 06-08? And, it's made it very hard for them to win national elections. I mean, even this one, they won by a hair. So, why is he an expert? Why is his opinion have all this value? Why should anybody buy his book? It's a crummy book.
Okay, good. All right, well, that is some of the questions and comments and concerns I wanted to ask and share with you guys on North Korea and related topics. And what I'd like to do now is switch gears a little bit and just to share some information and discuss this a little bit more. You've heard me give definitions of rhinos and blue dogs. Blue dogs being the right of center of the Democrats, rhinos being the left of center on Republicans. The big question coming up, and I have been paying very close attention to this, is are the blue dogs making a comeback? And the reason I asked that question, if you remember during the Obama regime, there at the start of his career in the White House, there were a good number of openly professed centrist, blue dogs, whatever you want to call them on that side, rhinos on the other. Rhinos have not disappeared. I mean, we still have them, and despite a lot of people's thoughts, I think it's important to have them because it keeps a lot of us in reality of things that we need to think about and talk about. But the blue dogs all but disappeared. And since Trump, and I'll give Trump the credit for this, since Trump, it appears to me we're seeing and hearing more from blue dogs than we have in a very, very long time. There was a thought that the Blue Dog Coalition had been disappearing, that it was a non-viable entity of the Democrat society anymore. But now you're starting to see more and more of them come out and talk about partisanship, the idea that, and you're hearing Republicans and rhinos, I won't say rhinos, I hate the word, but just to keep the story straight here, the rhinos and the blue dogs, you're hearing more and more of them talking together and suggesting working together to get through the issues at hand, whether it be healthcare, economy, defense, whatever. You're starting to hear more and more of them talking about those type of issues. Now, one of the Blue Dogs Coalition's three chairs, representative from Texas, Henry Culler it was, had a meeting in the Capitol Sam Rayburn room a couple of years ago and made a comment that the Blue Dog Coalition was fading, that it was becoming an ancient failing wing of the Democratic caucus. And now then, and I think Trump really had something to do with this. The group of moderate or conservative Democrats, which was almost just completely out of here, gone, back in 2010 elections, a lot of them lost their place, okay? But they have been rebuilding. They have been coming back. And I think that the Democrats are at the point now in their scheme of things, they're worried. I mean, give it to Donald Trump. Now, whether you hate him or you like him or whatever in between, he has made some people scared on both sides of the fence. And the ones that he has scared the most are those rhinos and blue dogs. And you're seeing more and more of them on both sides becoming more vocal, trying to say, wait a minute, we got to start facing some realities. Now, realities, whatever those are, okay? I'm who knows? But, yes, sir.
So my thought on this is I look at this a little differently. I start with the Republicans.
Okay.
See, I don't look at it as, quote, real conservatives versus rhinos. I think the real thing is elite globalization versus populist nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the real thing with the Republican Party is over not whether or not you favor leaving Social Security as is or privatizing it, but whether or not you favor enforcing immigration laws and having borders, or whether you favor open immigration. So in other words, whether or not you're a Jeff Flake kind of Republican or a Jeff Sessions kind of Republican. On trade, whether or not you favor, these trade agreements, or whether you are against them, trade needs to be done differently. On foreign policy, whether you think that we need to continue the way we've been going, like a neoconservative foreign policy, or whether you need to go in a different direction.
Right.
So I don't think of it as, when people say rhinos, I don't agree with the concept of a rhino the way they put it. I think it's really, the question is it going to continue in the direction of globalization or populist nationalism? It's like,
well, Brian, I think these names, I think these names come about because you got to have some way to address those that oppose what you believe. And so,
I think it's, I think names are, it's not that, look, you have to come up with a name for something.
Yeah.
But I just think the real fault line is different. It's not the way it was 15, 20 years ago, where it was just like over a Supreme Court justice. It's now, it's really, honestly, I'm telling you, it's like if you were in Britain. And the biggest question in Britain was not the size of government per se, it was stay in the EU or have a Brexit and leave the EU.
Right.
And here, it's like, do we keep going in the direction of globalization, or are we going to move in more of a nationalistic direction in the future?
Yeah.
And that's really the battle in the Republican Party. And that's what Trump was. Trump was a nationalist, and everybody else that ran against him in those primaries and general election was in favor of the status quo and of globalization. Now, again, you can agree with whatever side you want to agree with, but, and talk about rhinos, I think that's irrelevant.
I don't. And here's why Here's why I'm saying this. I think that the Republicans and the Democrats alike, neither one of their parties, neither party is as strong as it used to be. And without the support of the blue dog, the so-called blue dog, or the supposed rhino, neither one of them can get anything passed right now. You've got to have them. So I think that what's going on here is the today's politics is forcing not only the parties to talk with each other, but it's forcing those within the party to talk to each other. Now then, if they do not, as I'm sure you're professing, they do not, well, guess what? They're going to have some hard roads going to wherever they want to go. It's going to be full of pitfalls and potholes and cliffs.
Yeah. Well, we've already seen that. You got the opposition party that wants impeachment. You got members of the Trump's own party that wants to be impeached, and they want Pence to be president. And I think that if you don't see that, you're not paying attention. And I think the real battle lines are, especially if you're talking about Trump voters and the base of the Republican Party, is they move more in a populist type nationalist direction. And you have the establishment of the party where for them they want this country and the world to keep going in the direction it's gone in the last 25 years or so since the end of the Cold War and NAFTA. And you have more and more people saying, you know what, there's nothing for me in it. We're tired of all this stuff. We're tired of the wars.
Yeah.
We're tired of losing all of our manufacturing. We're tired of the borders and the cultural implications of it. And then you have the establishment saying, well, our donors love it. The business community loves it. Wall Street loves it. Silicon Valley loves it. The Chamber loves it. And I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let me. That to me is the battle.
Yeah. Well, let me give.
I'm telling you, it's not about whether or not you want to privatize Social Security anymore. A lot of people, honestly, and a lot of people that voted for Trump could care less about that. But they want the borders secured.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want the jobs coming home. They don't want any of the wars.
Yep.
They're going to have to fight it.
Yep. Well, I want, on the blue dog issue, give you some examples on why I think this thing is alive and well again. And I think that if you look at what's going on right now, you'll see that President Trump, has been talking to the blue doggers quite a bit. They've met with him on tax reform and other issues. And this has really gave some people in the Democrat Party some major upset tummies. They don't like the fact that some of their people are trying to work with a president that, folks, and I don't know other way to put it, they hate. I mean, I think they generally hate President Trump, and they don't like the idea that some of their people are actually talking to him. The Democratic caucus, let's face it, and I'm going to say this about the Republicans too. Each of their caucuses like to talk about diversity, we are supportive of all people. But, you know, their track records, both sides, are failing in really selling that motive, that belief that they are willing to work with people and they care about people from every color, every means of life, rich or poor, black or white, transgender or not. You know, their actions are speaking louder than their words. And right now, it's those that are in the middle that is keeping everything afloat, if you ask me, in my own personal opinion. If it wasn't for those, how many votes would people have right now every time they vote?
Well, Bill, and maybe the whole thing with Trump that people are missing is, you know, he's not the strident, you know, conservative Republican the way people make him out to be.
No, he's an independent. He's an independent, and he'll go whichever way.
An independent populist.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
The Republican proposed spending $1 trillion or $2 trillion in infrastructure. I mean, so I think he would more traditionally, you know, be aligned with the Blue Dog Democrats, except the Blue Dog Democrats have largely been wiped out.
Yeah.
And I can speak to what you're talking about. A congressman in the next district over who I met who got elected, I think, in 2006, lost in 2010, but it was in large part because of the Obamacare. Because in the end, he voted for it. And they told him, like, look, you know, this is a bad deal. But what happened when Obama got elected was there was this, you know, it was like they strong-armed him into going along with everything.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The Blue Dog Democrats that were in favor of more robust immigration enforcement, that were against the trade deals, that maybe were pro-life, that, you know, maybe were kind of more populist, you know, independent populists, they got wiped out. Now, maybe there's a comeback now, but if there's any in the Senate, other than maybe Manchin, I haven't seen them. And then Manchin's job is always hanging by a thread, because if you're a Democrat now, and if you even get seen with Trump, it's like Trump getting seen with Putin. You get the same kind of treatment. And the DNC, the National Party, can threaten to cut off the funding for your reelection. And you know, so you need that every 2 years or 6 years. So if they were building the Blue Dogs, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of evidence from it. I mean,
well, I tell you, Brian.
Maybe Manchin work with Trump on anything.
Yeah, I tell you, we are running short on time this morning, but we're going to pick up the issue on the Blue Dogs again later, because I think that not just the Blue Dogs, the Rhinos. I think more than ever in my involvement in politics, I think more than ever I see that these two entities are becoming more of a necessity within their own political parties, that they are becoming important at this point. And you know,
and I one comment. I do think the Blue Dogs are important. I think the problem for Republicans and the Rhinos is the Rhinos tend to be elitist. I think the Republicans need more populists to go along with, you know, they need a stronger populist wing, almost like a Blue Dog wing. But I don't equate the Rhinos with the Blue Dogs, because I've always looked at the Rhinos as these more elitists that like globalization, that goes into the establishment. The Blue Dogs are much more like.
Well, see, I don't consider those Rhinos. No, I don't consider those Rhinos, Brian. I consider those hold on to the edge of the earth rightist. You know, I don't consider those people Rhinos at all. So anyway, okay. All right. Well, Brian, thank you for your contribution this morning. I appreciate the conversation, Mike, and on the Facebook. I appreciate you, Neil, and all of you guys. Appreciate y'all so much for being here and taking part in the conversation. Folks, we will be back here tomorrow morning in the Pickle Barrel at 8 a.m. where we'll have a whole gamut of things to talk about again, and we'd love for you to participate. Bring your topics to the table also. And I'm going to encourage all of you, go to AmericanPatriotRadio.com, look up our schedules. First of all, get in there and join the group. We want you to join the group, and it makes things a lot easier for you if you do that. If you want to come in and listen to the program, make comments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get notifications of upcoming programs. You get to read and learn more about all of the people that are talking on these shows, like WA. You know, our histories and some of our thoughts are listed on our little information pages. Go in there and look at those and learn more about us, and make your comments in there. Also, I am, and all of us that do talk shows like this are interested in what interests you. So use your talents, your communication devices, and let us know what concerns you, and put some questions that you have in there you'd like to have answers to, and just maybe we'll be able to find some for you, or at least share our opinion. We'd like for you to do that. So until tomorrow morning, we'll let you go, and we'll be back here at 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the Pickle Barrel at American Patriot Radio. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
And don't forget to stick around to AmericanPatriotRadio.com all day long. Coming up next is none other than Life Empowering Words with Reverend Foster Clark, followed by Kids Corner. Don't forget about Happy Hour at APR, and later on, Women Are Worthy at 8 p.m. Check the schedule. Stay tuned. Hang out. Always music. Great shows. Always happening here on American Patriot Radio. Till next time, everybody, have a safe one.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. You've been in the Pickle Barrel with author, speaker, commentator, and show host Bill Pickle.
You are listening to American Patriot Radio.